It's Mr. Wright. Today we're going to go over triangle congruency methods. So these are all methods that you can use to prove that two triangles are congruent. So with traditional congruency, two shapes are congruent if all their sides and all their angles are congruent. But with triangles, you don't necessarily need every single side and every single angle. You just need parts of the triangle to be congruent, and that's actually enough information to prove that the two triangles are congruent. So these are the five that are going to work. So if like two triangles both have all three sides that are congruent, then those two triangles are congruent. So we call that side, side, side. So the other ones that are going to work are side, angle, side, angle, side, angle, 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 side. And then with right triangles, if you have a hypotenuse and a leg, just those two pieces of information in a right triangle, then that's enough info to prove the two triangles are congruent. The two that don't work are going to be angle, 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 and side, side, angle. So if you end up with pieces of the triangle where you just end up with that information, it's not going to work. It's not going to be congruent. So let's look at some examples, which you may, if you're following along, you may want to take a picture of this so you can reference it as we're going through these examples so you know which ones are going to work versus don't work. Okay, so these examples are also in your flip book if you're following along. So what you want to do when you're figuring this out, first you just want to make sure like the two triangles match up the same way, like the congruency marks are in the same spot. So like this one, the congruency marks are in the same spots. So when you're figuring out like which of the ones it could be, you just want to look at one of the triangles. So I'm just going to look at this triangle on the left. And all I'm going to ask myself is like, where are the congruency marks? Are they on sides or angles? So this is a side, this is an angle, this is a side. So if we go back to the five congruency marks, there's two options, right? It could either be angle, angle, side, or it could be side, angle, side. So the order of these letters matters. If the A is in between the two sides, that means the angle has to be in between the two sides in like the triangle. In this example, the angle is not in between the two sides. This also works the same way for these two, angle, side, angle, and angle, angle, side. You're just looking at so you have two angles on one side, and you want to look at where's the position of that side. Is it between the two angles or is it not in between the two angles? That's how you figure out the difference between those two. So our first one is going to be because the angle is in between the two sides, then the two triangles are congruent because side, angle, side. That's it. The next one, all I see, I have an angle, and I have another angle. So in my two triangles, they have three angles that are congruent, but that's one of the ones that doesn't work. So I would just write, these are not congruent. The next one, let's see, so I have an angle, I have a side, I have a side. So I notice that the angle is not in between the two sides. So if I just look at the sides and the angles, it would be side, side, angle, which we can't do. But now you also want to, this is a tricky one, because this is a right triangle, then this side is actually called the hypotenuse, and this side is called a leg. So because it's a right triangle, the answer would be HL. If this wasn't a right triangle, it wouldn't work. Look at a couple more examples. So with this one, I have two angles on one side, angle, angle, side. And I notice that the side is not in between the two angles, so the answer would be angle, angle, side. This one, side, side, side. That's it. Sometimes with like certain triangles, you're not going to have this shared side labeled. Like sometimes you're going to have to add these marks by yourself. Like if they have two triangles have a side that's in common, if that's not labeled, you want to add your own labels. The other thing that's going to come up is if two triangles have vertical angles. Those two angles may not be labeled. You want to add in your own marks for any vertical labels, vertical angles if they're not labeled. All right, so this next one, side, angle, side. So the angle is in between the two sides, so it's side, angle, side. This one, I have a right triangle, but I don't have the hypotenuse. So I have a side, an angle, side. So that's side, angle, side again. This one, let's see, if I just look at one triangle, I have angle, angle, side. and the side is not in between the two angles, so it's angle, angle, side, and not angle, side, angle. Let's see, so this one I have a side, another side, and an angle. So the angle is not in between the two sides. So this one is side, side, angle, which we can't do, so it's not congruent. Let's just look at a couple more of these because they can be a little bit confusing. So I want to show you. Okay, so like some of these ones, some of the sides aren't labeled. So again, if a shared side, like would be this side is a shared side, that's not marked. So you want to add that mark so that way you know we're going to use it. So now I know that shared side is congruent. I have a right triangle. That is actually the H. This is the L. So this one will be HL. And these next two, the angles in the middle aren't labeled. So you want to add your own marks because those are vertical angles. So you have to do that yourself. So now I know this is angle, angle, side. And I know that this one is side, angle, side. So those are examples where you want to add your own marks to the picture. If you have vertical angles, or if you have a shared side, you're going to add your own marks to make sure that you know that you're using those sides. All right, so that's how triangle congruency methods work. I want to go over like one more example in our flip book. So this is for, in these examples, there's something missing, and you have to figure out like what's missing. So first thing I want to do is if there's a shared side, I'm going to add marks. So like I'm just going to add marks. Or if there's vertical angles, I'm going to add marks. So that's not what we're looking for. What we're looking for is what else is missing in order to do that rule. So for example, this one is angle, side, angle. If I look at my picture, I have an angle, I have a side, but I'm missing the other angle. So the missing piece of information would have to be this angle is congruent to this angle. So what we want to do then is just add that congruent statement or write it out. So angle DUT would have to be congruent to angle TUS or SUT, either way, in order to do angle, side, angle. So there's like a piece of information that's missing. You have to figure out what's missing. So this one, side, angle, side. So I have a side, I have an angle, but I'm missing the other side. So we would need this side is congruent to this side. So those two sides would be, what letters do we have? We need KX to be congruent to WV in order to do side, angle, side. So that time a side was missing. So when you name a side, you use two letters. Side, angle, side. So I have a side, I have an angle, I'm missing the second side. So I need this side to be congruent to this side. CA needs to be congruent to LJ in order for this one to work. So you're just looking at based on the statement, like what's missing, is a side or an angle missing based on that statement, and then just write down the congruent statement for that missing piece.